Good morning. I'm downtown Logan Brown,
I'm Braydon.
and this is the Pickleball Effect Podcast.
Welcome to another episode this week. Today we're going to talk about some paddle babble. There's some interesting stats that came out from the most recent MLP event that we're going to talk about, some upcoming reviews, and my little girl Oakley is starting to get into paddle reviews maybe. We're going to talk about that. And then there's several really interesting news points that came out this week around MLP, around some doubts of MLPs, sticking around in the future, some new ownership groups, and then we'll finish off talking about Megan Fudge's post about line calls.
Let's do it. All right, Braydon, I got to say, I watched last podcast. Thanks a ton for Porter jumping in. That kid's amazing. That's awesome. Like, I love the energy. I got to really pick it up now. I feel like I got to bring.
There were a couple of comments. They're like, Logan,
you got to get your job.
Someone's coming after your job. You gotta do something different here. I don't know. I like the way you do it, Logan.
Thanks. But I think I could bring some more energy, But you two know each other, so there's like this rapport that you guys have built up over the years.
We know each other, but yeah, like we have some shared experiences, which makes things some back and forth a little bit easier. But he was great, man. I loved his little game he brought with Andre Daescu. I was so bad. Like, it was pretty funny though.
But I mean, even the fact that the week prior you guys had played DJ Young, like that's so cool. I know the event it sounded like, I saw your videos. It looked like it was actually fun, but I'm sure it was a bit like, what is this thing? But it was neat.
It was just totally random in Nampa, Idaho, of all places. But yeah, that was fun. But we're here again. So you were gone for a week. We were both on vacation this week. I was in Hawaii. You were in Amsterdam. It was just you and your wife, right?
Yeah. Those two places are totally different climates, man.
But yeah, you and your wife went on vacation. Give us some highlights. This is what I know about Amsterdam. I watched the last season of Ted Lasso, where they're in Amsterdam, and it's actually one of my favorite episodes of the season. And so I feel like I know Amsterdam really well. Anything you bring up, I will probably know about just from Ted Lasso.
Yeah, let's talk about Ted Lasso first. So, of course, I think one of the things you got to do is take a boat tour. But I would recommend trying to get one of the smaller tours. It was more like maybe there was only 6 adults on this boat, and a local toured us around. And she took us by the Ted Lasso scene. So it's a real place. That bridge she falls off of when she's in the bike lane, real thing. And then the houseboat.
They got Ted Lasso as part of the tours now.
Yeah, she brings it up too. She brought up an interesting anecdote. Apparently, Amsterdam is a popular place for up and coming comedians. They go there and practice before they go back to the States. And so there's a bunch of comedy clubs, and apparently before Jason, I guess Sudeikis, went to SNL, he spent some time in Amsterdam. So I think that was a part of the reason why they did an episode there. And so that spot was neat. The bike lanes are real. Like, bikers actually have the right of way regardless, like even over cars. It is just insane how many bikes there are. And it's like such a walkable, bikeable city. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I actually went there a couple of years ago. It's really cool. Like, there's a ton of bridges, very walkable, ton of bikes. I never did the bike thing. Did you guys hop on the bikes, or how did you get around?
I don't want to throw my wife under the bus, but on our big vacations, like when we went to San Francisco and New York, we biked over the Golden Gate. We biked the entire Central Park, right? And, she's fairly athletic, but on a bike, there's some like dicey times. And I was like in the wet and it's raining. The last thing I need is you taking a turn and this thing wiping out. So we decided to walk.
That could have been another Ted Lasso moment. You had Jamie and what was the coach's name?
Yeah, she would have fallen straight into the water, dude. Like the canal, there's so many spaces where there's nothing stopping you from just launching straight into it. That would have been her.
That's awesome. So you guys were in the city you guys were there for like a week and a half or something?
No, so we spent the first 4 days there, and then we took trains to Belgium. So we went down, you go through Brussels, we went to Bruges, and then we went back to I'm missing the city, but it's in between Brussels and Bruges.
Did you hang out in Bruges? I think I went there
for a day. We did a day in both, and then
kind of little, really pretty.
Oh yeah, Ghent. Yeah, Bruges and Ghent. So yeah, Bruges almost felt like a Disney World. Like you had to like almost put it past your head that it was real. Like
Yeah.
I thought it was. It feels fake. It's how pretty it is and kind of like old school. And
it's pretty cool. Everything there just feels older. And like you feel like you kind of take a step back. Well, it is older.
Yeah,
it's probably, but it's like a different like air to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, she crushed it. If anybody needs this B&B, it's not Airbnb. It's like a real bed and breakfast in this person's home. If you guys need any recommendations, you're going to going to Ghent. This was in Ghent. This woman had this beautiful, beautiful space, and she put us on the very top floor. And we were over on one side of the B&B. We're overlooking a castle that was owned by like a count. I don't really know what a count does. We went and toured it, but I still don't know what he does. And then on the other side, you're overlooking their part of the home, and then it's the canal. And there's like 2 massive clock towers. So she really did a good job getting that B&B. It was beautiful. It's like that was the highlight of Ghent to me.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you guys got away, could take a break. Nothing beats a vacation. And while you were there, I was in Hawaii. This was a trip I went on.
You got to play.
I did. I played a little pickleball while I was there. But the funniest story from my week in Hawaii was this hike we went on. So there's about 10 adults, 7, 8 kids that are on this vacation with us. Who's my wife and her sisters and their kids. So for some reason we decided to go on this kind of coveted hike in Hawaii, but it's 4 miles into this waterfall and 4 miles out. So it's 8 miles long. I didn't know what we were getting into. I just knew we were going on a hike the morning we did it. I guess my sister-in-law had to like wake up at 6 a.m. or something to get signed up for this thing. And all I know is it's going to be a beautiful waterfall when we get there. But we have like 7 or 8 kids. 3 of them are 5. We have my 3-year-old. There's another 3-year-old and a baby. Like this really little young crew. And we get 2 miles in, and we get to this beach. It's really pretty, and that's when I find out, oh, it's 2 more miles to get to the falls. I'm like,
you got to go back. Yeah,
I think we got to go back. I'm like, do you guys realize that we have like these tiny little kids, and everyone's like, we got to do it. We got to do it. We're here. So we did this 8-mile hike with these little kids, and they were incredible. I could not believe these 5-year-olds. They walked probably like 6-7 miles of it, but it was not like a family friendly hike. Like it was lots of boulders, lots of rivers or streams we had to get across, and it was they were amazing. But the falls were really cool. But on the way back from the falls, we didn't get a picture at the top of the falls. And my wife's like, we need to get a picture of the family before this thing ends. And the falls were still in sight. And so we were walking down the trail, and you can kind of break off the trail and go to the stream. And it's a part of the stream where like some of the like bedrock is like exposed, so you can kind of stand in the middle of the stream and get a picture with the waterfall in the background. So we go off the trail, we step onto this kind of little rock bed, and there's a couple of photographers there taking pictures. And so I'm trying to walk around. I'm holding my 3-year-old, and I just slipped, dude. It was like a cartoon slip. My feet just fly from under me. I land straight on my back, and I'm probably like a foot away from sliding into the water. Like the rock bed's up. And I could slide in. It's like a slide into the water. And I'm like really close to falling in. I'm holding my 3-year-old. Anyways, I land straight on my back. Luckily I didn't hit my head, and it didn't hurt too bad. I think I was like looking up at my 3-year-old to make sure she didn't get hurt. I think that kind of kept my head from hitting the ground, but I just hit, and I just laid there. And then my 3-year-old stood up, and my wife's like, crap, she can't slip because she could fall in. So my wife comes in after us. She slips.
Oh no.
Goes straight into me. I can't believe I didn't slide even further. And then when my sister-in-law was there, she came in and grabbed the 3-year-old and kind of helped us out. But we were like a foot away from sliding all the way into the water. And then afterwards, we still take this family picture. I'll have to like throw it up here because it's hilarious. I'm like pissed off in this picture. My wife has this big old smile for the family photo. My 3-year-old,
she's 7 months pregnant, right? I mean,
she's 7 months pregnant. She did the 8-mile hike too. It was pretty impressive. And then my 3-year-old is like kind of in shock, just like looking around. And then my 5-year-old's there, and she's like just crying and bawling because she was like scared for us. It is the like funniest family picture from that. But yeah, that was probably the funniest moment. And then I did play some pickleball while I was there. So we went to Kauai was the island we stayed and vacationed on, but I flew over to Oahu to hang out with some people I'd met at TOC a couple of months earlier at the PPA event there. So I went and played Jamie and Price and Haas. So this is like a couple that plays pro tournaments together. They're phenomenal players. And so I went and played with them. Really, really fun. We kind of played in this, like, it was like these older tennis courts that had lines, but we're just surrounded kind of like just green and mountains and kind of jungle. It was just gorgeous.
It looked beautiful. Yeah, I was like, dude, I've never played in some place that is that amazing. But in Utah, there's amazing courts too like that, right? I know it's not Hawaii, but you're surrounded by mountains. And
yeah, you're surrounded by mountains, but it didn't quite compare to this place. It was really, really pretty, but super, super humid and hot. And the ball definitely moves slower. We were playing with X40s because Jamie and Bryson are playing in Nationals, which is next week, right?
Yeah.
And so they're playing in X40s. They're playing with X40s at Nationals, which is kind of weird to me because this is like a PPA event. I think Nationals was like an event that was
owned by the USA,
like independent of PPA, and then PPA like bought it out or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, they're playing X40s instead of Duras. So we're playing with X40s in this humidity. And like my drops, like I've never been so good. Like the ball is like significantly slower in that temperature. And maybe like realize like if you live in like Florida or these like crazy humid hot areas, like I was playing with the Mach 1 4's 16 millimeter, and it just felt like kind of poo-pooey. Like it just wasn't giving me the juice that I was like used to. And so like you need something with a little more power there, and it'll feel more probably all courty or like control oriented than, something you play with, where I am in Idaho or even where you are in Greenville. So that was, you have to kind of take into account where you live and like what paddle you pick. But it's anyway, super fun trip. I got back last night. You got back last night. We're both dealing with a little jet lag here, but we're here. We're talking.
I know it's so funny. Like I'm gonna butcher this, but I can't. We must have been like almost 12 hours to 15 hours apart from each other at one point. I was 6 hours off the East Coast, and I don't know what Hawaii's on right now.
It's like 4 hours behind, so it would have been.
And you're 2 hours behind me anyway, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we must have been like 12 hours apart at one point. That's pretty funny.
That is funny.
You want to get into some pickleball? Talk some paddle?
Let's get into pickleball. There's some interesting some data you found from the last MLP event that you sent me.
Yeah, for sure. So I think so Brooks Wiley, he's the commissioner of the MLP. He's a good follow on Twitter, and he's pretty open about sharing some of the data around paddles and testing and things they're doing. Because before this, proposed merger, MLP was trying to kind of push the boundaries of testing paddles and making sure that they were like, there was a definition for what deflection meant, right, and a definition for the grit test, and they were always testing.
Definitely more so than what the PPA, like the effort PPA has put into it. It seems like MLP has focused on it more. And
they were both using two different entities, like these third parties at some point, but not sure what they'll do moving forward. But last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, we had Jill Braverman on her podcast really kind of call out a few different paddle manufacturers and players she felt like were playing with super poppy paddles that were a little dangerous, or she felt were dangerous in the court. And Brooks went to Twitter, not necessarily describing her rant or discussion, but this was pretty wild. So he said that in Atlanta, MLP Atlanta, which was, I don't know, 5 weeks ago at this point, the deflection point that they have, like this number from, I think it's 40 all the way up to 90, and differently than what you would think intuitively.
Lower deflection means more power, right?
Yeah, and I think the deflection is mainly like if you didn't do anything, right? If the ball just hits your paddle and comes off almost like in a counter, and how fast is that ball coming back, right? Mm-hmm. And so they were,
which can be like it's like almost like it's like the best number we have associated with the power level of a power, right? Or of a paddle. Yeah,
for sure. But when you look at the curves from MLP Daytona and MLP San Clemente from previous MLP events, the bell curve sits like the median is right around 69 for San Clemente, maybe almost 70. And for Daytona, it was sitting around like 64-ish, maybe 63. and then you look at Atlanta, and it's like it's starting to come way down. And he's showing like we'll share the tweet or whatever in the description, but he's saying these paddles are in fact getting faster based on deflection point. And
so essentially,
MLP,
from one MLP to the other, the bell curve just got lower and lower and lower. I mean, the deflection is for like the what do you call it? Like
that
the,
exact metric, like the
potential for speed is increasing with every single event, but like by a noticeable amount.
Yeah, and you gotta remember, like MLP is like 3 months apart normally, per event or something.
So not far. And
yeah,
I would suspect that these paddles they're testing aren't like they probably give them a few, right? Like because they have a few paddles we can play at the tournament. They give them 3 to 5 paddles or whatever to get tested, and they're not going to all be like crazy worn in. These aren't like delaminated paddles. These are just fresher paddles that just have that lower deflection.
Yeah.
So paddles are getting faster. The game is getting faster. Brands are pushing the boundaries here and at a quick pace.
Yeah, it's just there's a bar. So the bell curve is interesting to look at in the bar chart too, which we'll share here, where the amount of paddles that were in the 50 to 59 range, which he says like legal. He's saying if you ask many of the pros, they'll tell you 50 to 60 are deemed like 50 to 60 would be like too hot. And sorry if I got that wrong earlier, but they're saying 50 to 60 would be like too hot and a bit illegal.
The pros are saying that would be too hot.
Yeah. And then like the number of paddles that are falling between 50 and 59 at Atlanta compared to the others is almost double. It's almost double the amount of paddles compared to the previous events. And then to make matters worse, he put out a stat that 65% of paddles failed the grit test at MLP Atlanta as well. And so this has been talked about a good bit, but there's this RT rating that they have, this metric, and rough gritness is what they kind of call it. And 40 is the limit. However, they have a guideline to kind of give you margins of error to play with.
20%, right?
Yeah. So it can go,
which seems like a lot, like 20% margin of error.
Yeah.
Doesn't that seem high?
Which means probably the testing tools aren't as good as they should be yet. But 15 paddles, so 30% failed that. And so those were like literally removed from play.
So those were above the 20%, but 65% of paddles
went above 40. So they
went above 40, but were within that 20% margin
of error. So they gave them kind of a pass.
And then 15 of those paddles. So I think that tweet said 30% got removed from play. But that just goes to show, right, that like players, companies are pushing boundaries as much as they can. Like players want spin, players want paddle or want power, and whatever the rules are, they're hitting it and exceeding it a little bit.
Yeah, I wonder, do you think that through some of your testing on adding lead tape or whatnot, do you think that can add any deflection power?
I don't know if it changes the deflection, but I do think adding weight does add power. I've done some experiments where it's like statistically significant of the extra power you can generate with more weight. But that's just because the paddle doesn't like plows through the ball better, right? Like it carries through, it doesn't get pushed around as easy. I don't know if that's the same thing as deflection or if that would increase deflection, but
I'm just trying to think about what these pros could be doing. Not the pros, but the manufacturers could be doing
outside of deflection to like add more power.
Yeah, because there was another rumor months ago that there was like a paddle juicer out there, and I was trying to think to myself, like, what would a paddle juicer do? Like, what would you do to make it
increase deflection somehow?
I guess, yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, those numbers are pretty alarming, and I think we had talked about this offline. How like some pros are, I think it was Joola specifically, like this trend is not like they're kind of scared to like bring up or play against certain people with certain paddles because they are coming off so hot, and that can't be good.
Yeah, and I think too. I forgot who brought this up, but it was an interesting point that what appears to be happening and especially in the men's game where they're nervous about the counters because they're nervous that if you speed up, the counter that comes back could be twice as fast as what they're used to when they're practicing with friends or whatever. So what you're getting is really long dinking rallies because they don't want to counter. They're trying to respect that speed up and respect the counter. So what we get as consumers are these really long dinking rallies. So I think the next piece of statistics that would be really cool to see is as the paddles have gotten faster over this time range from MLP.
How is it like changed how points are played out?
Yeah. Are we seeing
like the number of the number of hits per rally or the length of the rally? Like, does it increase or decrease?
Or winners off third shot drives, winners off of the initial speed up.
That would be super interesting. Someone needs to do that.
Yeah.
Like that data it's probably out there.
Yeah, it'd be great if you could use some sort of machine like AI that just like could watch what's happening and tell you. But
yeah, that would tell the story of how the extra power and spin is affecting, the actual game itself. Are rallies getting longer? Is it changing the effectiveness of speed ups and those types of things? That would be really cool. I like that.
See if anybody hears our call and comes out with some data for us.
There's stat companies out there. Real clear stats. There's one of them. I'm going to message them. I'm going to tell them like, hey, go watch this. Give us the digits.
Yeah. See if they can give us something.
And then sticking with paddles. So I talked about a bunch of new releases that were coming out in the last podcast, and Joola actually released a paddle last week that I didn't even know they were releasing.
Right under our nose.
Right under our nose. I think they have some other stuff in the works, but they just kind of out of the blue released what they're calling the Hyperion C2. So this is, from the description, I don't have one, but it looks like it's the same thing as the Perseus, but with that Hyperion kind of curved top shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some comments online. They're like, "Oh, hey, is this different?" I don't think it's any different than the Perseus, other than the curved top. I don't really think that's going to change the playability of the paddle much, other than it just gives a different look. I do like the look of the curved top. You look good, feel good, kind of thing. But I might try to get my hands on one and get that added to my database just to see how the numbers compare to the regular Perseus. Though I don't think
because that has traditionally reduced swing weight normally, right? The curved paddles have a lower swing weight than the elongated.
A little, but nothing. I'm not sure. I can't speak to that. Like the hybrid shape reduces swing weight, so some people confuse a hybrid shape with the curved top. This bugs me. So there's brands like Rhombus and others who describe their paddles as a hybrid because it has a curved top, but I don't like that description, because when I think of a hybrid paddle, I'm looking at like the length of a paddle. So like a hybrid paddle is about 16.25 inches long, regardless if it's a square top or a rounded top. Whereas an elongated paddle is 16.5 inches long. So Rhombus has two paddles. They have like their R1 shape and their R3 shape. The R1 has the curved top. The R3 has the square top, but they're both 16.5 inches long, which I would say is an elongated paddle. But they describe the R3, which has a square top, as being elongated, and their R1, which has the curved top, as being hybrid, which I think is silly. It doesn't, like, what if you have a paddle that's 16 inches long and has a curved top? Do you call that a hybrid too? Like, it doesn't give you much information about the paddle anyways, to me, a hybrid shape is something that's kind of in between lengthwise between a standard and elongated. But the Hyperion C2 is not a different length as the Perseus. It just has the curved top. Like, they're both elongated shapes. One just has a square top. One has a curved top.
Let me ask you this though. How much of a delta would there need to be in swing weight for you to be like, okay, that might make a considerable difference in my play? Mm-hmm. And two, do you think that cutting the edges off, like if it's the same length from like the tip to the bottom of the handle, does cutting the edges off, do you maybe think that brings a larger sweet spot into play?
It actually, I think, reduces the twist weight a little bit, which makes the sweet spot a little bit smaller. Like taking that weight off the corners. Actually, I think kind of hurts the sweet spot a little.
Okay.
Nothing like major, but like just a little bit. I actually think it doesn't improve the sweet spot, but it theoretically, like, it would be a little more aerodynamic, though I don't know if it makes a meaningful difference there. But when we're talking about swing weights and like how it affects, like when you could tell a difference. I think for the average person, you can tell a big difference when there's like a 5-point difference. So if you play with a swing weight of 115 versus 120, you're gonna be like, oh man, this 120 is super heavy. I can start to tell a difference around like 2-3 points. Like when I add lead tape and it bumps it up, 3 points or so, like I can tell that it feels a little heavier, though I don't think it's really going to be a dramatic change in your gameplay until you hit about that 5-point range. So like if you're playing with a 115, add lead to 120, it's going to feel a little slower and heavier. But if it only bumps up to like 117, then like it probably won't be able to tell much of a difference.
That's good. Okay, good. I think people can keep that in mind, like when they're thinking about paddles, like what am I playing with now versus if I'm thinking about buying something new, like am I going to feel considerable difference or not?
Yeah, everything is so relative, right? Like that's what's really nice about like this paddle database I have. Like you go look at the paddle you're playing with now, you're like, okay, I am used to this weight, this swing weight. This is just what I'm accustomed to. And then you kind of base what paddle you're looking at off of what you've experienced. And then so like if you're you like that B&B filth, it's 123 swing weight. And if you go to play with something lighter or something like around 116, 117, which is kind of like an average, you're going to be like, oh man, this feels super headlight. But in reality, it's like right in the middle. But
that's a good point because their new paddle is supposed to be around 117. So, I've thought about trying that, but
the
Doug
Logo.
over there, the Logo. But Doug also thinks that, or he said in his marketing materials that he thinks that the sweet spot is a little better than the filth because that was a common complaint. So I'm curious, like if he was able to achieve that and if rounding out the corners. But I think his is a little shorter, so maybe
it's a little shorter and a little wider at the top compared to the filth. So that would making it a little shorter and a little wider is going to improve the twist weight, which is going to make it a little more forgiving that way. Although I didn't think the filth was really like for an elongated shape. I think it's pretty forgiving. Yeah,
it's been my daily driver, but I did hit with the carbon again today, and I liked it. It was good. I just wanted to pull it out of the bag.
Yeah, just to remember.
Yeah.
Carbon sent me their new what do you call it? Tour bag this week. It's pretty dope. I'm gonna include that in my bag review. This bag review is taking me forever.
Speaking of all these reviews, what do you got? So give us the update on the bags and the paddles coming out. What do you got?
Yeah, so the bags, every time I go play, I just take a different bag with me because I want to get a good feel for it, see which ones I like, which ones I don't.
One to the other.
I do, dude. It's actually been kind of annoying. Like I've been transferring stuff to each bag, and I get things lost. Like oh, I need this thing, and then I have to go dig through old bags that I've been using until I find it. Yeah. But no, there's definitely some I like. There's some I don't like, and so this will be a really fun one. I'm excited to do this one. I still have a handful of bags left to try, and so it'll be a few weeks out, but. Really pumped about that one. On the paddle side, I got the Selkirk Lux in the mail.
Sweet.
This week. So I have all three shapes. Got the Invicta, the S2, and the Epic. And we'll do so my review will include all three of those. But I've been just added those to the database today. Got a couple touches with it. And be doing that. And then I also got the the Pickleball apes. Have you heard of them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've never seen anybody like in person with it, but of course I've seen it online. So
that one's kind of been increasing in popularity recently. They were one of the first, or they might be the first. I'm not sure if they're the first or not, but to kind of popularize Kevlar as like a facing layer. So they have like a
loud, right? Like it's louder than a normal paddle, but
I haven't hit them yet, but I mean, it's maybe. I know Kevlar in the core will be louder. I don't know about as a facing layer. Because Kevlar has been used in cores, but I think they're one of the first, or maybe the first, to do it on the face. So they have like a carbon fiber Kevlar mix that is decently popular. I've had several people reach out to me to try those out. So I got those in the mail this week. Got those in the database, but I could do a review on those next. I could do a review on the Lux next, or
should we let the people decide here?
Yeah, let them tell me what they think. Selkirk, Pickleball apes, and then 6-0 has their Infinity coming out November 10th. So I've played with that one a okay amount. I have some production models coming in the mail. I've been using like a beta one, and so I'll probably want to try to have something close to November 10th. They sent an email out to people who are reviewing it. They're like, you can share. Don't share a full picture yet. You can share like a corner of it. So yeah. Should I show you a corner of the paddle? Do you want to see a corner?
Dude, what if you just like peeked it up into the frame? Like, give me a corner.
Right. This is what I'm allowed to do. Here it comes, corner.
Not too much now.
No, I can't get in trouble.
Oh my gosh. Was this the one you helped consult on, or is this a different? Is that a different?
Yeah, this is the one I helped consult on. But no, it's a little. I don't know if what I'm allowed to say, but it's a little more control oriented versus the paddles they have now. But
I've still never hit with
it's
the double black
edgeless.
diamond.
It's pretty cool looking. You've never what?
I've never hit the double black diamond. As popular as it is, I never hit it.
Well, we need to get you one. We'll get you one.
Yeah, I'll see.
And then this is kind of a funny thing coming along with reviews. So I posted a reel of my little 5-year-old Oakley wrapping or putting an overgrip on her paddle. So she has like this junior paddle from One Shot that's got like some dinosaurs and stuff on it, and she likes it. But whenever I'm like wrapping my paddles or putting on lead tape, she always wants to help me. And so she always does one next to me. She's actually gotten pretty good at it. So I did a video of her wrapping her paddle with an overgrip, and it was super cute. And someone responded, or this brand called The Wall. I had never heard of them, but they sent me an email and they're like, "We saw Oakley do that video. We want to send her, or we're a new brand. We're making kids paddles. We want to send her a paddle." I'm like, "Oh, here it goes."
Yeah, that's right.
She's already getting requests for get some paddles sent out to her. But it was fun. They had like a handful of designs, and she picked the one with blue stars. And so I'm gonna try and create a little video of her playing with it. It could be fun. But The Wall making kids videos.
Little mini influencer.
Yeah, a little mini influencer. I'll have to create her own account or something. But yeah, we'll see it. Any affiliate money she makes, we'll just throw in her little piggy bank. We'll see we'll see if it happens. But it was that was kind of fun. But yeah, that's where we're at with paddles. Which one do you want to see me review, Logan? Are you interested in any of those?
I mean, you haven't heard a bunch. I mean, I think you have the inside scoop on. It seems like 6-0, so that'd be kind of fun. I know that I saw a couple of folks do the pickleball apes. Is that how you could say it?
Pickleball apes, yeah.
The Lux is a bit overhyped or done at this point. Not that I don't want your opinion on it. I would love to hear your thoughts, because everybody else is like an influencer of Selkirk. So you're like,
yeah, Selkirk gets like a bunch of reviews of Selkirk people, right?
Yeah.
And so there's not they don't do a ton of like third party opinions, and so yeah, that'll be an interesting one. I'll throw my I imagine it'll be pretty similar to what else is out there, though, just because it is a very control-oriented paddle. I think it seems like they marketed it pretty accurately as far as what I've seen from other comments about it. But yeah, this is their control.
Porter say that he played, like you were saying in the last podcast, which I thought was kind of interesting for people to think about. Like when people think that they can't put power behind a paddle because it's too control-oriented, you were saying that Porter like literally smacks the ball, he rips it. And I think he mentioned that he played with the Lux and like just wasn't for him. I don't know if he explicitly said like, I can't get as much power behind this or pop or something, but
I don't remember him saying that. But we did talk about kind of power and paddles. Like, yeah, he currently plays with like the 16 millimeter SLK Halo, which is definitely known for being one of the softer ones out there. But like the kid can, like, it doesn't matter what he's playing with. He's just going to rip it, right? He just has that ability. And like, if you have that ability, playing with a control paddle, it's probably going to be to your advantage because it's going to improve consistency, bigger sweet spot, and you can put balls away anyways. And so having more power, I don't know how much that really does for you. But like we see Rob Nunnery, he's playing with the Lux. I think he's the only Selkirk pro I've seen playing with it. But he just won with Andre Daescu at the APP this weekend. And he's looking good with it. I mean, he's another one of those guys, right, that can just create his own power. It's there. He can still finish points. So it just kind of depends on your ability. But like if you need help generating power, then these aren't going to do it for you, right?
But do you think it would ruin someone's game like JW, who has like a massive counter? Like I feel like he has one of the fastest counters in the game. Do you think that giving him something that's even more plush would slow that ball down and take away one of like his superpowers?
Maybe in his scenario. I mean, the pros is always different, right? Like they can play with anything. And it's like we pointed out earlier with the data, it seems like the power and spin is what's most sought after for players of that caliber.
Yeah.
And yeah, for them, that power makes a huge difference. Whereas like you and me, maybe doesn't matter quite as much, just because when we counter a ball, the person we're countering it against isn't as good as them, right? So like the ball doesn't have to be as fast for it to, but it certainly doesn't hurt if you can manage it. I think I mentioned this in the previous podcast, but like power never hurts as long as you can control it. And like as you progress, you'll typically kind of move from like a control paddle to an all court, just things more powerful. And if you can manage it, use it. Like play if it doesn't hurt your soft game, if it doesn't kill errors or increase errors dramatically, then why not add a little power in there?
Yeah, I like it. Good advice. Solid.
And then, but speaking of some other news, so there's some stuff that come out around MLP this week that's really interesting. We were chatting earlier this week, and you sent me some information around Jim Kloss and some comments he made online about. I kind of read through it, but like fill us in on the Jim Kloss comments around like the validity or like MLP potentially not even being around in the future.
Yeah, I think
like
that
before you dive into it though, like who is Jim Kloss?
That's a good question. So here's all I know about him. One, he's an internet celebrity, right? So no, he's all over the forums. I think he's basically any pickleball forum you're in. I'm sure you've seen a post by him. You may just not know who he is.
Like, why do we care what he says?
So I think the reason why some people care what he says is because number one, he watches everything, and he's definitely he's rooted in the scene. He definitely knows everything going on in pickleball. But
sounds like Logan Brown to me.
Say again.
So that sounds like Logan Brown to me.
Yes, that is me. But I think he does have more connections than me to the pros. I think he does, in fact, coach multiple pros.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
But yeah,
I just thought he was just like this dude that just talks so much that people listen.
I don't think that's his only thing. I think he definitely wants to be that guy.
Does he do statistics stuff, or is that somebody else? Not connected to him. Okay,
I definitely know what you're talking about, but now I'm a little confused and not sure if it's him.
Anyway, so apparently this Mr. Jimmy has some connections with some has a little more information than we do.
Yeah, I think he definitely knows some pros and has coached them or is actively coaching some pros on the tour. So there's that, I believe. But
okay, tell us what he said.
Yeah, so let's give a little bit of a backstory. Everyone knows about the tour wars, but then there's the merger. Still, I don't think the merger has really been signed, right? I don't think
the merger hasn't merged.
The merger has not happened exactly, and I think the biggest downfall or the reason this hasn't really come to fruition is because I don't think the MLP is making any money, and I think they might be in some debt. And that's why Steve Kuhn, the former CEO and founder, was trying to sell multiple teams. I think to give like an influx of cash to the business. That was kind of the way they were making their money, is selling these teams and then bringing them in to the mix. But I think so. Jim is kind of on the side of he doesn't think that the merger will ever happen. And so I'm all paraphrasing this, by the way, but like MLP won't be able to survive because they're not a money-making entity currently.
So the MLP, he's saying MLP needs PPA to survive for money. They need money. But the PPA doesn't necessarily need MLP.
Doesn't necessarily need them. Yeah. It's this weird mix. Like I'm not sure... I totally see what he's saying. And from like a business perspective, like Ben Johns came on another podcast and brought this up, but they asked him like straight up, hey, why did you choose PPA? And did you consider MLP? And he was like, yeah, of course I considered it. I'll consider all options. But one thing that I didn't like about the MLP was that it lacked a business plan that really laid out the path to making money. And the PPA has that and has it in place. And so I saw a lot of on top of Jim's post, there was a lot of things on Twitter this week. Is relative for this pickleball world, but there was announcements we'll talk about in a moment about individual teams having all these celebrity owners, and like what does all of that really mean? Are these people just investing in the teams, and could the teams just be rolled over from the MLP to the PPA? Does the MLP really need to be a thing, or can these teams just go hop over into the new entity?
And just
I'm not sure how that would work financially.
PPA.
Yeah, but it's just kind of a weird situation because it seems like the teams actually have some valuation to them based on what the investors have put in. So on paper, they have a valuation, but the actual tournament, the entity of MLP, seems to be bleeding money and doesn't look to be profitable anytime soon, which I think is why they were trying to. This past year, you kind of saw where they were piggybacking off of PPA at these different events, so they could save money on all the setup and the cameras, and everybody could just kind of use the facilities of sorts.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And not resetting it up. And same with Nationals. They're going to be right after Nationals in Dallas. And so I don't know. We'll see. What do you think? Do you think MLP actually exists, or do you think they'll just kind of like write that business off?
Yeah, I do think with Kuhn not as involved,
and like two other board members
pieced out, is a big hit for MLP in that regard, because it seemed like Kuhn had the vision, right? Like he was pushing things, trying to make it happen. He had the relationships with the players, but with him not pushing and trying to bring his vision to life, really hurts them. And now you have the PPA pushing their vision. They seem to have all of the cards and the control, really. And so with no Kuhn, it makes this idea of MLP not existing in the future like very plausible to me. It seems like a valid argument.
It does. I just wish it's funny enough because I really like business. I work for a business and startup world. And
you work for a business?
What? Work for a business. Some people own their own business, Braydon. But I don't own a business, but I like business. I like learning about it. But this is interesting. Like when there's a merger in discussion, what happens if PPA just decides to say, you know what, whatever, you're on your own? Would they lose the players again? I don't know. Like what happens here?
Like they'd probably, if they do want to keep some sort of team format, they would want to make the merger happen, right? Because they want to keep the teams. Like the team names have some sort of equity now. They have all those, celebrity investors. They probably want to keep the teams. Like the merger might happen, but would it be called MLP? I don't know, right? Like there's some value to it still because of the players and the teams. Like they don't want to have to rebuild that. Like that would suck. But I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't see any issue with that.
Yeah, so Jim's, I think the biggest thing to take away too from Jim's post, that this is the inside track that you and I don't have. He seems to be alluding to the fact, he seems to be alluding that there are players telling him or his other sources that MLP December might not even happen. So I wonder if everything is just in massive disarray. There could be two things going on. MLP on the other side of this coin just announced a title sponsor, a new gin, a liquor sponsor, like a title sponsor for the MLP. So it's hard to believe they'd go out and have a title sponsor contract signed and then just cancel the December event.
Right.
So I don't know. You take it at what you want, but those are the two facts we know is that, MLP is in financial disarray. Their board is a disaster. They owe players like $50 million or something to the tune of that over the next 3 years. And then at the same token, they are getting sponsorship. So they haven't completely quit.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah. And sticking with partnerships, like we just saw a round of investment from like Lil Wayne and some others in one of the teams, right? Like there's still those types of things happening. So this was for the Texas Ranchers, Lil Wayne and some others. I forget the others, but they were bigger names. I just remember Lil Wayne because it's Lil Wayne, right?
Yeah. I just wonder if that's like legit. I know it's legit, but what do we mean here? Like he threw 10 grand in and
it's probably not a ton of money, right? Especially for like these uber wealthy people. But he did make a comment that made it encouraging that he was going to be a little more involved with like designing apparel and building the brand for the ranchers, which I thought was cool that he seemed like he was going to make a little more of investment than just money, because we've seen all these other investments from these celebrities, but it was almost like a fad. Like it seemed like a bunch of these guys just jumped in, dropped in some money, and then we never heard of them again. They're not involved. They're not trying to push it or promote it. Like Tom Brady did make an announcement, I think, when he first invested, on his Instagram, like, hey, I'm investing in pickleball. I think Trae Young came to the MLP that you went to.
Yeah, he actually showed up.
Those are the only two like celebrity people that have done more than just offer money, I think.
And Drew Brees done a bunch.
And Drew Brees, yeah, he's done a bunch. He's done a bunch like events too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
but it feels like there's a lot of star power there. That like, how do we get those people more involved with their teams to push the sport? Because there seems like there's a lot of untapped potential there, but also it seems like the investment they put in money wise probably isn't. It's a small.
It's probably just not big enough for their portfolio. That's what I would.
Right, like they could go spend 5 hours at an MLP event or 5 hours doing a shoot for some other brand, and they're going to make way more money doing something else probably than showing up at an MLP event. And so like their time is money, right? Like everything is very calculated for them, and it probably doesn't make as much sense for them to invest more time in MLP when the return probably isn't as lucrative as other stuff they have going on. But I don't know how to get them involved. Do you have any ideas?
I think pickleball just has to become more part of the communities they care about most. Like, what's interesting, although I appreciate Lil Wayne saying he's going to get more involved and maybe even try to do a clothing line. I'm not sure how well this venture did, but I think it did pretty well. Like Zoomies, I believe that was part of his portfolio back in the day. Did you ever go to that store in the mall, Zoomies?
Yeah, I've been there.
It's like they're still around.
They're still around.
Yeah, and I think it's fairly profitable, or at least it's popular. But that's a part of Lil Wayne's thing, but the problem is Lil Wayne's like he's into like streetwear, skateboarding, of course hip hop. I don't see that so much like
translating well
with pickleball, but I mean, of course, we want to like grow the sport into other demographics and things or different types of people. So like that would be great if like the communities they care about most and their friends, even their friends, like start picking up paddles and playing. Like we saw a year ago, like Kevin Durant playing in Austin.
Yeah,
which is cool, but I don't know if he does anymore. Jamie Foxx, before he got sick or ill, like he was playing a lot and owns like he has like 3 or 4 pickleball courts on his property. So
yeah, he even owns like a paddle brand or is invested in one, like the Best Paddle or something like that. What a great name! What a great name!
Best Paddle. But I mean, I think I would love to see this. I think it could be really cool to bring. It's got to go beyond what they're doing right now with just like, oh, we're going to throw a pickleball event at the NBA arena or MLB stadium before. Because you've seen that a lot, right? Where some player throws out the first pitch, they set up a court outside and that kind of thing. But if they could take it a step further and really try to make it like, I think like a PPA event, but you get the NBA stars or like Drake or like Lil Wayne. These folks help promote it and build it into just like a party thing. So it's play, it's party,
which is what MLP is kind of known for a little bit more, right? It being more of a party, more of an event than like this PPA stuff is. So the possibility of them being more involved that way makes more sense.
Or what's that huge event that happens down in Florida every year?
The US
Open? Pickleball. What is it?
The US Open?
Yeah, I guess it's the US Open. But I feel like I saw videos this past year, like there's a massive concert and stuff that happens over the weekend there. Like they really...
I think Nationals is going to be that way a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see what...
That could give us a preview maybe there. Yeah.
But I think they got to do more of that. And they got to bring it to their communities. So, if Lil Wayne wants to do it in New Orleans or wherever he's living currently, or maybe he wants to do something in Houston because I think he has ties in Houston, like that'd be cool. Like let's do it up and let's do it kind of big and let's use the PPA and MLP's like knowledge of setting up these events for pickleball and their knowledge of setting up events for their sport or whatever. Like let's put those two heads together. That's how I think we should approach it.
Just more event style things.
Because it'll bring people together for more than just like I just think there's so many people that maybe have interest in the sport, but like they don't really want to go watch pros or not really sure.
So they need some other incentive that's not
Other
just
incentive.
watching.
Yeah, the pros play.
The pros play. Yeah, I like that.
Speaking of the pros playing.
Speaking of the pros playing, Megan Fudge made some noise this week with a post she made. So this some background here. She posted on, I think it was Facebook. She said she's going to retire from singles. So Megan Fudge, she's one of the top female APP pros. So she and Susanna Barr partnered together. I think they've won their 5th gold in women's doubles this weekend. She plays a lot of singles. I don't know how often she medals. It doesn't seem like it's very often in singles, but she's definitely a competitor in the singles area. And so she's playing Salome Davidze in an event or in a match this last weekend. And her actual post is kind of confusing about, like, I don't know. Did you read it? Like,
yeah.
And it was kind of weird how she worded it. It was hard to follow, but I think she was essentially saying that there were a handful of bad calls that Salome either like questioned or overturned, or got the ref involved and overturned, that she felt was cheating.
I think it was like the opposite. I think what happened is that she was getting the player has the right to call the ball, right? So
in or out, right?
Yeah. Salome, is that how you say it? I never get it right.
I think so.
Salome. Yeah. So she was calling balls out that then Megan had the right to refute. Mm-hmm. And when she did, and they went back to watch the replay, they all got overturned. It was like 4 or 5 in a single match got overturned. So the player calls it out. Salome calls them out, but they're not out. And so she's got to go back to replay like 4 or 5 times. And I think what she wants is some sort of rule that says like, hey, if you've gotten overturned more than 2 times or something, you get a point penalty.
Okay. So I was thinking this wrong. So there was 4 times where she hit the ball in, Salome called it out, she challenged it, and then the ref overturned it. So she's saying if you challenge more than twice and you get it wrong, or if you get challenged more than twice and you get it wrong, then you just can't do it anymore. I think that's fair.
Or something. I mean, can't do it anymore. That's kind of funny. Or like you can't call balls anymore. Hey, you're done. You're out. But
you can't like stop or prevent. Like she still has to call it in or out, right?
Well, she has to call it out. She doesn't have to call it in. But I mean,
she still has to call her own balls, so you can't like stop her from not calling balls in or out. But anyway, she makes this big deal of it, and she says, "I'm going to retire unless they make some changes to how line calls are made and to prevent cheating."
They made a change on the spot this weekend.
Yeah. So watching the finals today, they had line judges, and they were so loud. Did you hear? Every time a ball was out, they're like, "Oh!" like just screaming it. And anyways, it wasn't just for singles. They did it for every single doubles, every single event. They had all these line judges, but you can't do that for every single game. And if you're not playing, on center court, you're on like a fringe match. There's just not enough refs to make that realistic. But they did do that anyway. So she says, "I'm retiring from singles unless you do something about these line calls." And Salome has a bad history of these line calls. Lots of people have accused her of that. But even today, so she beat Judith Castillo in the final. She smoked her like 11-4, 11-4. And with all the line judges, like Salome is still a great player. I think she's tough to beat regardless.
Man, she's not a fan favorite.
But she is not a fan favorite. But I respect her in some ways with how much crap she gets and how she just, it's like, meh, whatever. And like when you see her at like PPA or other events or whatever, like she's kind of a lone dog out there. I bet she is. She's just like sits by herself in the corner and in the tents. No one like hangs out with her. And I just cheer for her because no one else cheers for her. Anyway, so she has bad rep, but like, what do you think, dude? Like, are you for or against, or are you with or against Megan Fudge's comments about, what she was saying?
Yeah, I mean, this is very much unlike any other sport. Like in professional tennis, there's a line judge. So like you could call the ball, but you're not the first person to call it. The line judge is Just like a referee in football or a referee in basketball. And most of those sports, there's a limited number of challenges you're allowed to go for. And if you win the challenge, you're fine. But if you lose the challenge, then you lose that challenge, and maybe you lose a timeout, like in the NFL.
But Megan was getting the challenges right.
Right.
Like they were
so we have to do it like in reverse.
But like when I'm confused, like if that's what she was grumpy about, like if she was still getting the calls for her, like she was overturning them. She was saying like that was the reason she lost. So that doesn't line up.
Do they replay the point in that case, or I don't know if they automatically?
They would give Megan the call. They would give her the point if it was overturned.
Maybe it disrupts her flow. I don't know.
I don't know, but she was complaining about it. But she was saying like that was why she lost, and she's sick of this. But I don't know. It was just I didn't totally understand what she was complaining about. Even as you like explain it that way, it's like, okay, if the points did go in her favor after she overturned it, but she still lost. I don't know, like, wow. What's like the problem, I guess? I mean, that she hate that she just has to question everything, or was there also calls that were out that weren't overturned? I don't know.
That she feels like we're in. I mean, yeah, I mean, that would be a problem if like you really thought the ball, like it's similar to what we talked about a few weeks ago with Roscoe Bellamy's, like that serve that was 3-4 inches so out, but that wasn't even called by the other player. And I mean, we saw in a previous match where there was like a bad call by the ref where the player just like dumped the next serve into the net just so the player could get the ball back.
Yeah. But there was even another questionable. So in the comments of Megan Fudge's post, several people pointed out a call that from like some previous tournament where Megan hit a ball out against Judith Castillo and it was clearly out. Castillo called it out, and then Megan complained to the ref. The ref overturned it and said, yes, it's Megan's point. But when you watch the replay, it's like 2 inches out. And Megan was going, complained to the ref about it. And so I don't know, man. Like, I feel like it kind of goes both ways. Sure. Davidze is definitely, it has the reputation of calling, but like I feel like that's something you kind of have to deal with, like with the rules that are in place. And like, should she retire over this? I think that is,
I think retire strong. I just think she was saying she's not going to play again until.
Well, she used the word retire. She's like, I'm retiring until some rules in place about this. But yeah, it's something you kind of have to deal with. And it's unfortunate that, Davidze, doesn't give the right calls sometimes. But it's part of the game, I guess. That's just kind of my opinion of it, which I think was unpopular among most of the comments. That's how I saw it.
I'm sure it gets in your head. I'm sure it frustrates you, but yeah, I think as long as you continue to have the right to challenge, I'm with that. And as long as they're being overturned correctly and you get the point or you get the serve back, that's great. But I'm kind of in favor of some sort of discipline. It'd be kind of interesting if you gave a point penalty after 2 or 3 overturns. You'd be like, listen, just stop calling the wrong ball here. And maybe it makes them play a little more, like play more conservative, right? Like if it's a little tight, like I'm just going to play it out instead of calling it out.
I wonder if Davidze like really sees them in and she just intentionally calls them out, or if it's just close, she just calls it out because she doesn't know.
Or maybe she likes to just play it really tight and she knows that maybe she's wrong 50% of the time, but half the time it's going to just make the other player mad.
The rules allow it. Yeah. It kind of makes people, grumpy, throws them off. So like it could be just part of her strategy, and she wins a lot. Like she's a phenomenal player, like regardless. But I would bet that she just doesn't see it 100% and just calls it out, like just defaults out.
Probably.
Where there's probably some players who would default it in, and
you know what? They're losers. They're losing.
And they don't win as many championships.
They don't win.
There he goes. There you have it. We'll hear from people in the comments. Everyone's going to hate me, I'm sure, for not siding completely with Fudge on this. But I'm sure there's ways to make it better.
Yeah, come back with something better next time, Braydon. We need a real opinion from you, okay?
All right, man. Well, thanks for hopping on, Logan. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you again next week.